power of the NRA and Louis LaPierre are evaporating, it's so important to remember the immeasurable hold that their legacy still has on American life. First, remember the way that the Second Amendment is talked about today was not at all the way it was understood for decades. I mean, the NRA didn't begin as a lobbying arm for gun ownership. It was a marksmanship club founded by Union veterans after the Civil War. But in the century that followed, it transformed into a concerted and well-funded effort to recast how the Second Amendment was understood. Just take a listen to a Republican nominated Chief Justice of the Supreme Court talk about the Second Amendment back in 1991.
This has been the subject of one of the greatest pieces of fraud, I repeat the word fraud, on the American public by special interest groups that I have ever seen in my lifetime. A well-regulated militia. If the militia, which was going to be the state army, was going to be well-regulated, why shouldn't 16 and 17 and 18 or any other age persons be regulated in the use of arms, the way an automobile is regulated?
To use Justice Warren Burger's language, the NRA, with the help of Louis LaPierre, solidified that fraud 8 years later in the direct aftermath of what at the time was the worst school shooting in American history, Columbine. Following that horrific shooting, where 2 students shot and killed 13 of their classmates and injured 20 other people, Louis LaPierre and other NRA leaders hopped on a crisis call to decide how the organization would handle the situation. And according to the tapes released by NPR in 2021, the NRA was in a panic. They considered canceling their convention that would be held just days later a few miles away from Columbine in Denver. They even pitched the idea of starting a $1 million victims fund. But ultimately, this is the key piece, the strategy they landed on is the one we have seen from the NRA and its allies ever since: defiance. Despite the urging of the victims' families to cancel the convention, the NRA pressed on despite protests. And NRA President Charlton Heston delivered these words decrying any regulation on gun ownership.
We cannot, we must not let tragedy lay waste to the most rare and hard-won human right in history. We will not relinquish it, or be silenced about it, or be told, do not come here, you are unwelcome in your own land.
The strategy became to double down, to never give an inch. And in tragedy after horrible tragedy that followed the Columbine shooting, the NRA and its acolytes never wavered from that mission. Even 13 years after Columbine, at Sandy Hook Elementary School, where 20 first graders and 6 teachers and staff were gunned down, the problem could still never be about the guns.
The only way to stop a monster from killing our kids is to be personally involved and invested in a plan of absolute protection. The only thing that stops a bad guy with a gun is a good guy with a gun.
More guns. The answer for the NRA and its right-wing allies was more guns after 20 first-grade children were murdered in their classroom. In the over decade since, with each mass shooting that has become just commonplace in American life, that's still the answers they give. Just listen to the Republican reaction to yet another school shooting that happened earlier this week at a high school in Iowa.
I don't support infringing the rights of law-abiding citizens with respect to the ability to exercise their constitutional rights. I know these things can be used to try to target things, and a lot of the things that are proposed would not have even prevented any of these things.
We could go and take away a certain kind of gun today, and that would make you feel better today. But a week from now, there'd be another shooting.
It's just horrible, so surprising to see it here. But I have to get over it. We have to move forward.
Get over it. Those responses you just heard are all courtesy of decades of work by Louis LaPierre and his once personal slush fund, the NRA. While he's on the way, out, and the organization he helped build is a shell of what it once was, the damage of their legacy lives on in America. Coming up, an exciting announcement about who will be joining me on tomorrow night's show, so stay with us.